Hey guys, Stigma here, and today we're going to be talking about this little guy, the Access Virus TI. This particular one is about 10 years old, and I actually am borrowing it from a friend, and luckily he's let me hang on to it for a while, and I've had some time to dig into it, and it is one of my favorite synthesizers. It's just a lovely piece of gear. You can do so much with it, and it's super easy to do sound design on it. So today I want to share with you a patch that I built and kind of show you how to do it. If you were into electronic music in the late 90s, early 2000s, you may remember something called the Roland JP-8000, which was a pretty famous early virtual analog synthesizer. It's a pretty neat piece of gear, but specifically there was a sound on that synth that was called the Supersaw. It was an oscillator, and the Supersaw influenced dance music really heavily in the late 90s, early 2000s, and you probably heard it on a million tracks, and it was just this kind of stabby, sort of like wide sawtooth sound, and it was really just something that was kind of created by that synthesizer and by Roland. And the Supersaw is 7 sawtooth oscillators that are layered together and detuned. So you get a little bit of aliasing and all this kind of weird chorusy stuff, and it's just this kind of staple of early 2000s dance music. The Virus actually has a couple of cool things. One of them is the hypersaw. So we're going to use the hypersaw oscillator and create something that I call the überSaw, and it is a very kind of a deep sound that's referential to that era, and I think it blows the Supersaw out of the water personally. So let's get into it. Okay, so we have we're going to use 2 oscillators on this. So oscillator 1. Obviously change the shape of that thing, but we're going to go into mode hypersaw. So let's turn the oscillator balance all the way over. So this is hypersaw, this is with 1, and you can add density, which adds more sawtooth waves, and then you can detune. So you're kind of getting there. And it kind of gets crazy if you start maxing it out. That's just kind of a mess. So the JP-8000 runs 7 oscillators, 7 sawtooths on its Supersaw mode that are detuned. So the cool thing about hypersaw is you can actually just dial in very easily without having to run a whole bunch of different oscillators. You can run it at 7 and then detune it. So I think running the detune at about 90. So that right now is just oscillator 1, nothing else, hypersaw, 7 density, and detuned to 90. So that's kind of cool. Then we can get into, go to oscillator 2 here, and same thing, hypersaw. So we can, we're just adding, we're going to run the oscillator balance even, so we're running 1 and 2 at the same time. Actually, let's just hear 2. So this is 2 as it is, and then if we start detuning, we get the same effect. So we're basically just doubling what we've already done, and I'm going to run it at 7 density. So basically we have the exact same thing. that's oscillator 2, oscillator 1, and we'll just balance them out at 50. So now we have essentially 14 sawtooth waves running at the same time and detuned a little bit. So now you can kind of get a little bit creative and start messing with the detune on each individual oscillator. And you can up the density too, so take it up to 9, which is the max. But actually, sonically, I actually just prefer running them at both 7. So this is oscillator 1. Well, oh, cap fell off my rack here. This is actually a 3-tiered keyboard stand, and these metal shelves are from IKEA. They're shoe shelves, so it's kind of a neat way to add desk space, because I have a pretty small room, as you can see. So I have a lot of desktop equipment like the Electribe and the Blofeld and some other stuff. This is just an RMX 1000 that I'm keeping up here, but so since I don't have a whole lot of keyboards, I just added these shelves so I can have essentially what amounts to more desktop space, and it's kind of a nice little setup. So anyway, yeah, so that sounds pretty cool. So that's pretty sawtoothy. Okay, so then we can start getting into messing with the sub-oscillator, which is a neat thing that the Virus has. A lot of the higher end synths have sub-oscillators. It's just a lower frequency oscillator. Let's see, so it runs off of oscillator 3, and I'm not really sure what the waveform of the sub-oscillator is, but it gets sounding a little hollow when you start cranking it. I think it's a square wave. It sounds like a square wave. Let's see, does oscillator 3... Yeah, it's just running a sub-oscillator. Essentially does the same thing. So I personally, I like adding a little bit of sub-oscillator. I think it brings out the low end a little bit. If you get too crazy with it, it starts to sound kind of hollow. Actually, that sounds like it's not a square wave now. That's interesting. Okay, so it's on slave. Interesting. Or you can run it as a wavetable. That's interesting. Yeah, this is a really cool synthesizer. I really like it. Typically, we'll run this in slave, so that'll be another sawtooth. The Blofeld here, which that's for a different video, but this guy is a wavetable synth. If you know anything about Waldorf, they're big into wavetable synthesis. It also does other stuff, but the Virus is just kind of everything. It does FM, it does wavetable, it does just traditional virtual analog stuff, but it is a digital synth. Well, both of these are. So anyway, we have the sub-oscillator. You can kind of start to hear it bring the low end. I have a KRK subwoofer hooked up to this monitoring setup, and you can really get a feel for the low end. So now we're just kind of playing around. So I think that sounds pretty good for the saw. It's kind of a neat neat thing. Now we can start to add some character and bring out the coolness to this this thing. So I think we will cut the attack a little bit on both of the oscillators. We're just going to do 1 and 2. So I'm just going to turn it to 1. Turn the sub os down. So this is oscillator 1 here. And I don't like it to be so crispy of a attack. Something like this. So really, you can start to mess with the other parts of the envelope, but I think this needs to be full sustain on this guy. And you can start to mess with release if you want, but maybe we'll add a little bit of a release on there. So then just pop over to oscillator 2, which you can hear. Pretty much the same. Something happened. berSaw. Oh yeah, it's just the detune amount. Get these things pretty close. Okay, so cool. And then now we can start to bring the sub. It's starting to sound like a Supersaw. Actually, it has, to me, it has a lot more character. You can bring in that sub oscillator and just really add something. So next we can get into effects, and I think effects are important. One of the best features of the Virus TI is it has a really good built-in effects chain here. So you can kind of you can do delay, reverb, different variations of those. You can do EQs, distortion, analog boost, which is kind of cool. Chorus, phaser, you know, basic stuff like that. But I think we're going to do a little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb, a little bit of low and high EQ boosts, and then let's mess with that analog boost and see what that sounds like. So we have a little bit of delay here. We're and we can pick our delay type. So it's classic right now. I personally like tape clocked because it actually clocks to the MIDI clock, which is neat. You get a kind of a ping pong effect. And you just kind of, you can crank the feedback up where it just keeps going and going and explodes. But I just want a little bit. Maybe like that. And then a little bit of reverb. Let's see. A little too much. So this is kind of the fun part of sound design, and I can just sit here and mess with this thing for hours. It's just a lot of fun. Get into crazy. That's interesting. think I like the ambience. It's kind of neat. Let's see, so now we're going to go into a little bit of low boost. I'm going to leave this at 78 Hertz. And just a little bit of low boost. A little bit of low boost is nice. You can start to mess with the frequencies a little bit. Then it just starts to get crazy, but we just want a little bit. Just want to be able to feel the bass a little bit on this. So now I'm going to actually skip the mid EQ on this and just go to high and just bump it a little bit. It just kind of accentuates that digital 90s sort of trancey sort of sound. Liking the way that's sounding. And let's pop over into the analog boost, because that's kind of neat. So that's no analog boost. Let's see, that's frequency. You can just kind of play with the frequencies and the amount. I'm just triggering this with the Machine Studio behind me. I have it on chord mode, and that's one of my favorite modes, and we'll probably do a video about just chord mode. It's pretty neat. I'm not a super awesome keys player either, so no great keyboard skills for me, but I can mess around and I can program stuff, which counts. So the analog boost, I'm actually not 100% sure what it does, but it sounds like it takes some of the digital edge off of things, which I'm okay with it. Even though this is primarily a digital sound, I don't know, you be the judge. Sound better with straight like this, or with a little bit. I think it sounds a little bit better with it. So that's kind of a cool little run through of what I call the überSaw, which is just pretty much 14 sawtooth oscillators stacked and detuned with a little bit of flavor added. But it's a neat patch. I actually was just messing around with this thing the other night and kind of was like, oh, I want to do like a JP-8000 sort of deal, and the hypersaw really fits the bill with this. So that's pretty cool. And let's see, I might have something already. I was messing around with this trance thing and I made a pattern in Machine. Let's see if it'll work. sounding. So that's my little quick tutorial, maybe quick, my tutorial on building a JP-8000-esque, Supersaw-esque, sort of, I think, better and better across the key range, überSaw. So I hope you enjoyed this video and keep checking back for more.